Nobody in the room saw it coming. Not the producers, not the crowd packed into the gleaming rows of Jimmy Kimmel's studio, not even Jimmy Kimmel himself. One moment the laughter was deafening. Late-night comedy doing what it always does, mocking another conservative face under the dazzling spotlight. And then everything changed. Karoline Leavitt stood. She delivered one final devastating blow. So sharp it cut through the artificial smiles and scripted sarcasm. She pulled off her microphone, dropped it onto the glossy stage floor with a hollow clatter, and walked out. No script, no permission, no looking back. And in that moment, Jimmy Kimmel's career, built on years of smug jokes and Hollywood applause, cracked under the weight of a 27-year-old woman who refused to play along. Did he just end his career live on air? Tonight, we unravel the showdown Hollywood didn't want you to see. Before we dive into the story, comment where you're watching from and smash that subscribe button. Because here we celebrate real voices that Hollywood tries to silence. Tonight's story isn't just about a guest walking off a late-night show. It's about arrogance meeting its match. It's about the moment when a new generation stood up, not with a joke, but with fire. Jimmy Kimmel, Jim Carrey, Hollywood royalty. They thought they could mock Karoline Leavitt into silence. Instead, they ignited a firestorm they couldn't contain. Let's rewind the clock and see how it all started. It was supposed to be a routine night on Jimmy Kimmel Live, the kind of show millions had come to expect. A parade of A-listers, a few sharp political jabs, and just enough smugness to keep the late-night crowd feeling superior. The stage was set perfectly. The house band played upbeat covers of 80s rock hits. The crowd buzzed with expectation, smartphones ready for viral moments. The giant studio lights gleamed down like judgmental eyes, and behind his glossy desk, Jimmy Kimmel smirked, his fingers tapping against a stack of carefully prepared cue cards. Tonight's special, politics meets comedy, a theme the network had promoted heavily all week. On one side, Jim Carrey, Hollywood's manic genius, armed with a sketch pad and his trademark chaotic energy. On the other, Karoline Leavitt, the youngest press secretary in American history, and a rising star in a movement Hollywood hated. The plan was simple: mock Leavitt. Paint her as inexperienced, out of touch, and ridiculous. Score cheap laughs from a crowd conditioned to sneer at anything connected to Trump or MAGA. Jim Carrey would draw humiliating caricatures. Kimmel would poke fun at her youth and loyalty. The audience would laugh. The internet would share the clips. And another conservative voice would be neatly, effortlessly diminished under the glow of studio lights. At least, that was the plan. But Karoline Leavitt wasn't there to play along. She wasn't there to be another punchline. She wasn't there to smile politely as they mocked everything she believed in. She came prepared for the sneers, prepared for the jabs, prepared for a fight. What Kimmel didn't know, what Carrey never suspected, was that tonight would not be business as usual. Tonight, the crowd would not leave laughing. Tonight, they would leave stunned. And by the time the final credits rolled, Jimmy Kimmel wouldn't just lose a debate. He would risk losing everything. Jimmy Kimmel leaned back in his chair, flashing his signature smirk, a stack of cue cards clutched in his hand. The band played a playful riff as the camera zoomed in on the night's main attraction, Karoline Leavitt, sitting calmly on the opposite couch, her posture straight, hands folded lightly on her lap. "So," Kimmel began, his voice dripping with playful sarcasm, "we have here the White House's youngest ever press secretary, 27 years old. Wow, when I was 27, I could barely keep a cactus alive." Laughter erupted from the crowd. Kimmel waited for the laughter to die down before continuing. "Tell me, Karoline," he said, flipping through his cards, "what's harder, running a press room or mastering Instagram filters?" The audience howled. Even Jim Carrey chuckled from the guest seat, where he sat with a massive sketch pad resting against his knee. Leavitt smiled politely, but said nothing. Carrey jumped in, voice animated. "Oh, come on, Jimmy, give us some credit!" He flipped the sketch pad around to reveal his first caricature. A cartoonish Leavitt depicted as a schoolgirl with oversized pigtails, standing at a White House podium with "Trump's Little Helper" scribbled across it. The crowd roared. Some audience members pointed and laughed, phones flashing as they captured the moment. Kimmel laughed along. "Jim, you're too much." Turning back to Leavitt, he continued, "I mean, really, Caroline, isn't being a press secretary a little, I don't know, above your pay grade at that age?" Another wave of laughter. Carrey piled on. "Did you get the job because you could explain TikTok trends to the president?" The mocking was relentless. It wasn't just jokes. It was a coordinated assault designed to rattle her, to turn her into a meme. But Leavitt's face remained composed. Her eyes gleamed, not with anger, but with a calm that unnerved the crowd more than any outburst could have. She waited, calculated, ready to strike when the moment was right, and when she did, it would shake the very foundations of late-night television. Karoline Leavitt leaned forward, resting her elbows lightly on her knees. The laughter in the room hadn't fully died down, but an electric tension filled the air, as if the crowd sensed something unexpected was coming. She picked up the microphone, her voice cool, clear, and commanding. "Jimmy," she began, "it's cute that you think running a White House press briefing is like choosing an Instagram filter." A few chuckles from the crowd, but they were nervous now, unsure if they were supposed to be laughing. Leavitt continued, her tone steady, slicing through the forced humor like a blade through butter. "When you were 27, she said, you were reading scripts written by other people, chasing after a Hollywood dream. At 27, I was answering questions from the world's toughest journalists and navigating crises that actually mattered." A few claps broke out. Kimmel shifted uncomfortably in his chair. She turned to Jim Carrey, who still held up the caricature, frozen halfway between triumph and uncertainty. "And Jim," she said, "I love your cartoons. But while you were doodling, I was coordinating media strategies for a sitting president during some of the most turbulent times in American history." A gasp. A scattered applause, louder this time. "You think age defines ability?" she said, her gaze sweeping the audience now. "It doesn't. Character does. Grit does, and frankly, Hollywood lost its grit a long time ago." The audience, unsure at first, now broke into genuine applause. Some even stood. Kimmel tried to recover, flashing a strained smile. "Easy there, Caroline, we're just having fun." Leavitt didn't miss a beat. "Fun," she repeated, voice like steel wrapped in velvet. "Is mocking someone's faith fun? Is belittling someone's service to their country entertainment? Maybe for Hollywood. Not for America." The applause grew louder. Kimmel's smile faltered. For the first time in years, Jimmy Kimmel, the king of late-night smugness, wasn't in control of the room. Karoline Leavitt was. And she was just getting started. The studio lights dimmed slightly as Kimmel shuffled his cue cards, his signature grin more forced now than charming. The energy in the room had shifted, and he felt it like a tide pulling against him. "All right, Caroline," Kimmel said, raising his eyebrows theatrically. "You've got some spunk. I'll give you that. But hey, let's be real." He leaned closer toward the camera, inviting the audience into the joke. "TikTok briefings, social media stunts. Come on! That's not press secretary material. That's influencer material." The audience chuckled, but the laughter was thin, strained. Jim Carrey seized the moment. He flipped to a new sketch. Leavitt drawn in cartoonish influencer attire, complete with a ring light halo and hashtags like #MAGAQueen and #White House Dance Party floating around her. The laughter this time was louder, somewhat desperate, like a room trying to revive a dying mood. "You're the first press secretary," Kimmel said, "to turn the White House into a TikTok house. Is there going to be a trampoline in the Rose Garden next?" The audience roared again, but their laughter lacked the confidence it had earlier. Karoline Leavitt sat still, her face expressionless, the calm before a brewing storm. Kimmel, sensing a flicker of control returning, pushed further. "Seriously, Karoline," he said, "do you get paid in likes or retweets these days?" The room erupted in a messy blend of laughter and awkward murmurs. Kimmel laughed along, but deep down a knot twisted in his gut. Something was off. This wasn't how it was supposed to go, and Karoline Leavitt was about to show him exactly why. Karoline Leavitt slowly stood up, her heels clicking purposefully against the glossy stage floor. A hush fell over the studio. She stepped toward center stage, not rushing, not faltering. The spotlight caught the glint in her eyes, sharp, resolute. She raised the microphone, her voice low and steady. Jim," she began, her gaze sweeping over both men. "You think social media is a joke?" Silence. "Social media," she said, "is how millions of Americans, the ones you ignore, hear the truth without it being filtered through networks like yours." A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd. "You mock it," she continued, "because you can't control it." She turned to face Jim Carrey directly. "You draw cartoons of me because it's easier than facing the reality that your world, your Hollywood bubble, is losing its grip on real Americans." A smattering of applause, then more. Leavitt turned back to Kimmel. "You want to mock my generation? Fine. But understand this. We're not asking for permission. We're taking the conversation back." The applause swelled, genuine now, no longer staged or polite. Kimmel opened his mouth, but Leavitt cut him off. "You think a few TikTok videos diminish the work I've done?" She paused. "Jimmy, when you were my age, you were hoping someone would laugh at your jokes. When I was 27, I was standing at the White House podium answering the world's toughest questions, while you were reading punchlines written by somebody else." The crowd erupted, not in laughter this time, but in cheers. Kimmel leaned back, visibly rattled. Carrey looked down at his sketchpad, his confidence faltering. Leavitt gripped the microphone tighter, her voice rising with passion. "You can laugh at me. You can draw me as a cartoon. But you can't erase what I've done. And you can't stop what's coming." The audience rose to their feet, cheering and whistling. The tipping point had arrived. Jimmy Kimmel had lost the room, and Karoline Leavitt was just getting started. Jimmy Kimmel adjusted his tie nervously, feeling the momentum slipping further out of his grasp. Leavitt's powerful words still echoed through the studio, stirring the audience in a way he hadn't anticipated. He needed to claw it back. Fast, so he did what desperate hosts do. He pushed too far. "Karoline," Kimmel said, forcing a chuckle, "all this talk about truth and grit. But come on, let's be honest. Isn't your faith in, well, certain figures?" He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "A little naive?" A few uncomfortable titters from the crowd. Then he added, almost as an afterthought, but everyone caught it, "Believing in fairy tales is cute when you're 5, not so much when you're running a press room." Gasps, audible now. Even the band missed a beat. Jim Carrey, sensing an opportunity, tried to bail Kimmel out. He flipped to a new sketch, a caricature of Leavitt depicted as Trump's little angel, complete with cartoon wings and a halo. He held it up with an exaggerated shrug, but the room wasn't laughing. Kimmel, realizing he'd crossed a line, tried to play it off with a quick, "Hey, it's all in good fun." But it was too late. The energy shifted hard. The audience stiffened. The applause lights blinked uselessly. Even the camera operators hesitated, unsure whether to zoom in or cut to commercial. Karoline Leavitt rose slowly from her chair. No anger in her face, no trembling, just steel. And with that silent, deliberate motion, Kimmel knew he'd made the biggest mistake of his career. Karoline Leavitt stepped to the center of the stage. The spotlight, unplanned and unfiltered, caught her like a beacon. She gripped the microphone tightly, her voice ringing out clear and sharp. "Jimmy," she said, "you don't get to mock faith. Not mine. Not anyone's." The crowd was silent, hanging on every syllable. "You hide behind jokes because you're afraid of what faith, conviction, and truth look like." She turned slightly, addressing Jim Carrey. "You draw cartoons to belittle what you can't comprehend." A murmur ran through the crowd, some in agreement, others stunned. Leavitt's voice dropped lower, cutting deeper. Tonight wasn't about comedy. It was about showing America what elitist arrogance looks like. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the audience like a heavy curtain. "You call it humor, I call it cowardice." Gasps, some cheers. "You laugh because you're scared," she said, her voice rising. "Scared of a generation that doesn't need your permission to lead. Scared of a country that's waking up." The audience, once primed for canned laughter, now roared with real, untamed applause. Leavitt pulled off her microphone with a single deliberate motion. The wire dangled from her hand for a brief second before she let it fall to the floor with a hollow, echoing thud. She turned, walking calmly off the stage. No tears, no regrets, no looking back. The cameras scrambled to follow her. The production team whispered frantically into their headsets. Kimmel sat frozen, blinking at the empty space where Leavitt had stood moments ago. Jim Carrey slowly lowered his sketch pad, his face slack. The crowd erupted into chaos. Cheers, chants, a few stunned boos. But the tide had turned. The woman they had tried to humiliate had walked off, not defeated, but victorious. And Jimmy Kimmel's career, so carefully crafted over decades of punchlines, felt like it had cracked apart in a matter of minutes. Hollywood had just witnessed the birth of a movement, and there was no putting it back in the bottle. The studio was a swirling maelstrom of confusion. Camera operators scrambled, unsure whether to cut to a commercial or keep filming. The band played a disjointed tune, trying to fill the deafening void left by Karoline Leavitt's dramatic exit. Jimmy Kimmel sat frozen behind his desk, his once cocky demeanor shattered. He cleared his throat, forcing an awkward laugh. "Well," he said, trying to salvage the moment, "looks like somebody can't take a joke." The words fell flat like stones sinking in a river. The audience, once quick to laugh at his every quip, now murmured uncertainly. Some booed, others simply sat stunned. Jim Carrey, sensing disaster, half-heartedly lifted his sketch pad and waved it like a white flag. He attempted a manic dance to lighten the mood, but the crowd wasn't buying it. Phones lit up across the audience. Clips of Leavitt's walk-off were already flooding social media. Backstage, producers shouted into headsets, desperate to regain control. But it was too late. The moment had already escaped their grasp. In the control room, the director buried his face in his hands. This wasn't just a PR nightmare. It was a complete meltdown. Kimmel stumbled through the rest of the show, his jokes landing like lead balloons. The energy never recovered. By the time the credits rolled, it was clear to everyone in the building. Tonight would be remembered for one thing only. Karoline Leavitt had walked off Jimmy Kimmel Live, and the fallout had only just begun. The clip of Karoline Leavitt's walk-off spread like wildfire. Within minutes, it dominated Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. #Leavitt. Walks out #Kimmel cancelled #Hollywood humiliated. These hashtags trended worldwide within the hour. Conservative influencers shared the video, praising Leavitt's courage. "A masterclass in standing up to the elites," one viral tweet read. "She didn't just walk off, she walked over them," another said. Memes flooded the internet. A photoshopped image of Kimmel with a game-over screen behind him. Jim Carrey's shocked face captioned, When your sketch can't save you, a gif of Leavitt dropping her microphone with the words, "This is our America now." Mainstream media scrambled to control the narrative, some calling Leavitt unprofessional, others painting her as overly sensitive. But it didn't matter. The people had already chosen their side. Even liberals couldn't deny the power of the moment. "Whether you agree with her or not," one left-leaning commentator said, "you have to admit she owned that stage." Kimmel's show page flooded with negative comments. "Mocking faith? Career suicide. You got wrecked by a 27-year-old. Time to retire." Sponsors took notice. Advertisers quietly began pulling out of upcoming slots. Jim Carrey's PR team issued a statement claiming the sketches were light-hearted satire. It was met with instant backlash. "No," one viral response said, "it was elitist arrogance and you got exposed." Meanwhile, Karoline Leavitt posted a simple message on X. "They tried to humiliate me. Instead, they reminded America why we fight." The post exploded, garnering millions of likes and retweets. Across TikTok, users recreated her speech, lip-syncing her words with hashtags like #WalkOutStrong and #TruthOverMockery. In less than 24 hours, Karoline Leavitt wasn't just a press secretary. She was a movement. And Hollywood? It was reeling, wounded, and scrambling, with Jimmy Kimmel at the center of the storm. The days following Karoline Leavitt's walk-off were a brutal blur for Jimmy Kimmel. Headlines rained down like hammer blows. Kimmel mocked faith. It backfired spectacularly. Leavitt's walk-off, the moment Hollywood lost the room. Advertisers flee late night after Kimmel disaster. Ratings for Jimmy Kimmel Live plummeted overnight, the steepest drop in the show's history. Viewers abandoned the program in droves, disgusted by the arrogant mockery on full display. Several major sponsors quietly pulled their ads. Internally, network executives held emergency meetings, trying to figure out whether Kimmel could survive the PR nightmare. Statements from Kimmel's team fell flat, apologies without sincerity, defenses without real contrition. Meanwhile, Jim Carrey's reputation suffered collateral damage. His light-hearted sketches were dragged across social media, cited as symbols of Hollywood's disdain for real Americans. Attempts to paint Leavitt as fragile or overly sensitive backfired spectacularly. Clips of her poised, commanding speeches on stage dismantled every accusation. She hadn't walked off in weakness. She had walked off in strength. Hollywood's usual script, mock, belittle, move on, had failed. And Jimmy Kimmel, once untouchable, now seemed like a relic of a decaying media empire. From her office in Washington, D.C., Karoline Leavitt watched the storm she had unleashed, not with gloating, but with quiet resolve. She scrolled through messages of support from truckers in Ohio, ranchers in Montana, small business owners in Texas, single mothers in Florida. You speak for us. You gave us a voice. You showed them who we are. She opened her X account and posted a single message. Hollywood mocked us. America stood taller. Thank you for reminding me and the world why we fight. The post exploded instantly. Newspapers around the country ran headlines about the Leavitt effect. At conservative rallies, chants erupted. Karoline! Karoline! Commentators called it the beginning of a new cultural era, one where traditional media's stranglehold was finally broken. Meanwhile, Jimmy Kimmel's ratings continued to tank. Advertisers never fully returned. His once iron grip on late-night TV slipped into obscurity. Jim Carrey, battered by the controversy, retreated from public life for months. And Karoline Leavitt? She rose, not just as a press secretary, not just as a political figure, but as a symbol, an icon of a generation tired of being mocked, tired of being silenced, tired of bowing to elites who thought they owned the culture. From the ashes of Hollywood's arrogance, a new voice rose strong and unbreakable, and it carried the hopes of millions ready to reclaim their place in the story of America. Karoline Leavitt didn't just walk off Jimmy Kimmel's stage. She walked into history,